Right, stop scrolling through. If you're wanting a PC case that doubles as a statement piece, can show you system temps, flashy visuals, and still fit a beefy GPU without sounding like a hairdryer, the Valkyrie VK02 in white might be the only case you need to think about this year. Stay with me, we're going to be tearing this one apart, testing the cooling, noise, and that built-in LCD at the front that everyone keeps talking about. Hello folks, welcome back to Gadget Joe. Today, the Valkyrie VK02 LCD case in white. It's got a pretty long name, clean looks, and a lot packed under that tempered glass. We have covered cases on the channel with screens implemented within, and they are slowly starting to become the latest in case trends. So today, I want to see where Valkyrie can slot themselves in with the rest. Valkyrie are still a relatively new, upcoming brand, but have been making waves within the industry. I've been very fortunate on the channel to work with them from early days and have been watching their growth and progression personally, and they have had mixed reviews from different people. And I will be completely honest in my review, as always pointing out any things that they have done right and any things that they have done wrong. So with that in mind, let's get on with the video. As usual on Gadget Joe, we always take a look at the unboxing experience first. Unfortunately, my box arrived quite badly damaged. No fault of Valkyrie, it was down to the courier who quite literally dropped the entire box out of the back of his van right in front of my eyes. Thankfully, the contents are all fine thanks to the included foam packaging from Valkyrie. You get the case itself, and inside that you have a large cardboard box that contains all the accessories you need. Inside this you get a front panel that can be used to replace the screen on the front if you don't fancy having the screen on. Next you get a USB-A to C cable and a HDMI to mini HDMI cable for powering and providing graphics to the screen. Next to that is a little accessories box with all the mounting screws, cable ties and more, all nicely labelled and in place, and that's it. A pretty simple affair for the unboxing experience of a VK02. Quite contrary actually to the very premium unboxing experiences found on some of their products, but then this is simply a PC case and it will be much more difficult to replicate on an item this large. Now we have that out of the way, let's talk about the case itself. First impressions. This thing is stunning. The VK02 takes a mostly minimalist silhouette. It gives it a satin matte white finish and then drops a large tempered glass side panel so your build becomes the show. The white colour here is slightly warm, not sterile hospital white, more like premium ceramic, which looks great with both white and dark component builds, as you can see here with the system that I have installed. Size-wise, it's a pretty large case at 480mm in length by 500mm in height and 240mm in width. It sits at around 14.5 kilos empty, which makes it a very weighty case. But it's super solid with some really nice materials used. There are no weak spots, no flexible areas, and everything fits together nicely too, with no obvious panel gaps anywhere. The VK02 is an ATX case with support for ATX naturally, down to micro ATX and mini ITX. It can support, however, boards up to eATX, even though it isn't technically stated anywhere. In fact, the ASRock Z790 Taichi in this system is exactly that, and as you can see, it fits nicely. The design of the case is very well laid out. It's quite a boxy design with no curves anywhere, except for the slight curves on the edges of the front. The front is a full-sized mesh panel with square grills and a chrome RGB strip in the middle that meets the Valkyrie silver banding across the upper third with Valkyrie embossing in them, and then finally the large 10.1 inch screen, which we're going to look at in more detail shortly. The top of the case is very similar with the theme, a large square-holed mesh for ventilation and the I/O baked into the bottom right. Speaking of the I/O, we have a power and reset button, 2 USB 3, audio and mic ports, and finally a Type-C port. At the rear of the case, it's pretty much standard case behaviour with motherboard I/O cutout and rear exhaust ventilation, an 8-slot expansion slot, and a removable PSU plate that can be attached to your PSU externally and then slid into place and secured. The VK02 supports vertical GPU mounting, and that can be achieved by removing these 4 screws and rotating this entire plate and then screwing it back in. The rear side panel is plain white with a large ventilation space to the left. On the business side at the front is a full-size tempered glass panel with a somewhat small border. There's no tinting at all here, so you're going to need to be on point with your cable management and presentation. Inside the case, it's a pretty nice place to be. It has a large open space with a smaller PSU shroud at the bottom. 2 of the 3 sides have full ventilation and include cable routes at the rear and also a grommet at the front for GPU cable management, so you don't have to bend your cable back from underneath the motherboard. It's a nice little thought that helps to clean up the look when in use, as you can see here. There are rubber grommets all around the motherboard tray to help with cable tidying. They're nice and thick too, meaning they stay in place when you are working with them. The VK02 is a very fan-friendly case too, with supports for up to 13 fans. That's 3 120 or 140mm on the front, another 3 120 or 140s on the side, another 3 120 or 140s on the top, 1 120 or 140mm at the rear, you get a 140mm RGB fan included, 2 120mm fans on the shroud, and then finally a single 120 or 140mm on the bottom. This is very good to see, as that screen does unfortunately block some of the airflow coming into the case. Not by a lot, but the huge 13 potential fans absolutely 100% make up for any obstructions. Lots of fan supports also means lots of radiator support too. Up to a 360 or 420 on the front, a 360 or 420 on the side, a 360 or 420 on the top, and a 120 or 140 at the rear. You could technically put a 120 or 140 on the bottom too, but it would be a complete waste as it wouldn't be able to operate effectively anyway. There's loads of space to play with too, even for chunkier radiators. The front panel comes off too. First you need to remove the screen, which simply slides up and pulls away. Make sure you disconnect any cables first, of course. Now that that's out of the way, you can pull the front panel away. This is pretty tough to do, as that thick plastic holds it in pretty tight, so you're going to need to use a little bit of brute force to get it open. But once it is open, you have access to the front panel to mount your fans to underneath a magnetic dust filter. This panel can be removed via the thumb screws too, meaning that you can install your fans or radiators outside of a case and then insert them into place. It's the same on the top too, as the entire panel can be removed by pulling it away to expose the fan and radiator tray, but can also be removed via the 4 screws to mount everything outside the case. This is not only useful for fan mounting, but also creates a large open space to work inside the case when building your system. Now we move to the rear side of a case and remove the panel via the thumb screw at the top and lift it away. The panel is solid and well built. It has a little bit of weight to it and it's not got very much flex at all. The rear side is very well thought out also and is nice and clean with all white cables included too. One of my biggest pet peeves in the industry is when a company makes a product that is a certain colour but doesn't bother to match the cables or accessories to it. There are lots of cable management routes too, with plastic clips to hold cables in place to aid cable management and zip tie points all over, with lots of space for cable routing with those grommets too. Randomly, there is very little information about the hard drive supports of the VK02, but there are 2 panels at the rear that can be removed via thumb screws. Each one can hold one 3.5-inch drive or 2 2.5-inch drives. There is also space on the shroud at the front for a further 3 2.5-inch drives if you need more. Underneath the panels are a large motherboard rear cutout, and at the bottom are 2 screw-in panels that can be removed for cable routing depending on the size of the motherboard installed. These are nice to see and keep things clean and well hidden too. On the left is the panel for the side mounted fans and radiators. Interestingly, there is a point at the bottom that can be unscrewed to remove if needed, although I'm not entirely sure for the reason of this, but it's an option nonetheless. And now we move on to a bit that you're probably here for, and that's the screen. The screen is a fantastic addition, and Valkyrie have done an actually really good job of implementing it within design. It doesn't look like it's just randomly been added on or be in an awkward position. It just suits the overall aesthetic really nicely. Connecting it up is simple too. Just plug in the Type-C cable and then the mini HDMI cable at the rear, route it through the front panel and then out the rear via the rather handy cutouts at the bottom of the rear expansion slots to have it come out the rear into your GPU and in an available USB socket. Click the screen back in and you are good to go. Another nifty little thing about this screen is that it has a built-in kickstand in it, which can allow it to be freestanding. If you don't want the screen to be on the front, you can replace it with a solid white panel that comes included within the box we saw earlier, and then have a monitor wherever you wish to have it as a standalone monitor too. The screen itself is rather nice. It's a 10.1 inch IPS display that looks nice when in use. The colours look surprisingly accurate and detailed. Being IPS means the viewing angles are fantastic too. It's not a full HD display, but more a WXGA resolution or wide extended graphics array at 1200 by 800 pixels with a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. The images on the display look crisp and sharp though. Video playback looks great on it when you are playing the videos on it. You can even technically use it as a second display and have your desktop running on it. Although at this size it's gonna be a little bit limiting. It is a 60Hz panel too, which means motion clarity is good. It's absolutely not going to function well for gaming, but it's never made claims to be a gaming display. It is not the brightest, however, at just 250 nits. In fact, it's relatively dim. In a dimly lit room, it's plenty adequate, but add any light to the room and it begins to look a little bit washed out. You might be able to see some examples of that here in the studio with the intense lighting above. It's not unusable in well-lit areas by any means, but it would be nicer if it were a little bit brighter. There are controls on the other side to increase brightness or lower it, although the lower one seems a little bit pointless. You can also turn the display off here too if it's getting in your way. It's a touchscreen unit too, which is a nice little addition to further enhance its usefulness. I will say, however, the touchscreen capabilities are a little bit limited and I really struggle to get it working, so it's just a nice little feature to have. Whilst it can serve as an additional monitor for your setup, its primary use is mostly PC monitoring. That can be done via the Mythical app, which I'll link below, that gives you real-time system monitoring and control over the display. On here you can download different plans for hardware monitoring that can then be shown on the screen to match your preferred style. They show CPU and GPU performance, temperatures, wattage, utilization, and other key performance statistics, which are ultimately incredibly useful. Now, the screen itself is absolutely a statement piece. It's designed to stand out and get people talking, but it's also very useful, which is really nice to see. Valkyrie could easily have just slapped a random screen on, but they've gone one step further and made it genuinely functional. It also fits the aesthetic of the case really well too, which is a surprisingly difficult job to do, so I have to commend Valkyrie on that. And that pretty much sums up my review of a Valkyrie VK02. We've covered the unboxing, accessories, specifications, mounting capabilities, and this fantastic little screen. Building in it was a lot of fun. The extra space and additional mounting options made it really easy to work in. It looks fantastic too, as you can see with this build. For the final part, it's time for me to summarise it all with the pros and cons of the VK02. Starting with the pros, and they are pretty plentiful. It has a fantastic look to it. It looks very premium. The slightly off-white means it suits any setup, even the darker contrast of a motherboard seen here looks fantastic. There are silver accents all over too, which give it a little bit of extra premium feeling. It's a solid, well-built and highly engineered case that offers little to no flex. Every piece feels well-built and well put together. The fan support is insane. Up to 13 fans in a case this size is very nice to see. Ventilation is also very well thought out with lots of ventilation points all around. Lots of ingenious little quality of life improvements, such as the covers for the cable routing at the rear, included hidden cable tidies, removable fan trays, labelled and organised accessories, and cable cutouts for the display make the building experience super simple and clean. That included display is fantastic. Really good quality visuals, solid coloured accuracy, fantastic viewing angles which are ideal because most of the time this case will be at the side of you or mounted just out of view. The ability for it to function as a separate display would be invaluable for streamers to display chat or video controls on. The system performance monitoring is genuinely super handy to have on tap also. Finally, the biggest positive of this case is the one thing I haven't mentioned yet, and I did that on purpose because it's amazing quality, and that is the pricing. The VK02 LCD can be picked up from Valkyrie's own site for as little as £105. Granted, it's on offer, but still that's impressive value for what you are getting. Including that display makes it a very appealing option if you are shortlisting this case amongst others. Now, finally, let's go over the cons of a VK02. The first one is the fan inclusion. Out of this box, the case only comes with one provided fan. It is a nice 140mm ARGB fan for the rear exhaust, which functions and looks fantastic, but it would be nice to see some additional fans included too, even if it bumped up the price a little bit. The case is so well made, using nice thick materials, and that is fantastic, but it does mean that removing some panels can be slightly stiff and difficult. Fortunately, it's well made, so it won't damage it, but it still doesn't feel too nice when you're having to manhandle the front panel to remove it. Finally, the display once again. It's fantastic, insanely useful, but I wish it was just that little bit brighter. It's easy to see and is bright enough in the right conditions, but at just 250 nits, it's a relatively dim display in comparison to some others on the market. And that's pretty much it. A very solid offering by Valkyrie. Some of their products get some mixed reviews and opinions, but me personally, I've never had a bad experience with any of their products. They always feel well made and constructed, and it's clear to see the passion that they put through into them. The VK02 LCD is an incredible case, even more so for the price point. If you're wanting a white themed rig and want people to actually notice it, then this is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. If you liked this deep dive, hit like on this video, it really does help me. I did a full feature build of this very case and setup you see here that I'll link below too if you want to see a more cinematic look at the build process. Don't forget to subscribe too for weekly reviews, build tutorials, giveaways and much more. And that's it from me for now, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.